the COVID-19 pandemic. Although GDP took a significant hit, the French unemployment rate was not affected by the crisis and continued to decline, following a trend visible since 2015. On the other hand, the inflation rate increased rapidly toward the end of 2020 and reached a peak of 6.3% in February 2023. As of June 2023, the French population was still facing significant inflation, with some sectors being more affected than others. For instance, prices were specifically high in the transport sector, with a difference of 6% in comparison with the previous year. And finally, food prices suffered the highest rise with around 13.7% of inflation rate.
The annual inflation rate in France was confirmed at 2.3% in March 2024, down from 3% in February and compared to initial forecast of 2.6%. In February 2024, France exported 50.3 billion worth of goods, while its import amounted to 56.3 billion, equating to a trade deficit of 6 billion. France is of course far from being the only country where globalization poses political problems or is contested by part of the public. However, globalization poses a particular challenge to France for at least three reasons. First, it directly threatens the French dirige state tradition because of the loss of state control to the economy and society that it implies. Moreover, globalization irritates the French because they are historically very attached to their culture and their identity, which seems today to be directly threatened by a globalization that is often confused with Americanization. Finally, globalization is particularly difficult to accept because it seems to make France's aspiration to an international role even more elusive. Thus, when in European poll conducted before September 11, people were asked what does the word globalization primarily evoke for you? 25% of French people questions answered domination of the United States, compared to only 8% in Italy, 6% in Great Britain, and barely 3% in Germany.
Examining factors such as international trade agreement in France. Trade agreement are very rare between Canada and France. European Union are the only one we know of to currently are the Canada-European Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement or CETA. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development or OECD. World Trade Organization or WTO. Canada and France are important to each other as they both work an entry point to the North America Free Trade Agreement or NAFTA. France has been member of the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade hereinafter GATT since 1st January 1948 and the World Trade Organization of hereinafter WTO member since 1st January 1995. In 2018, France hosted the conference at WTO Fit for the 21st century. France is deeply involved in the WTO policy. Foreign direct investment in France. Greenfield project announced in France reached USD 20 billion UP from USD 14 billion in 2021. In the same year, the stock of FDI reached USD 896.8 billion, around 32.2% of the country or GDP. So next is kita naman sa kuan picture no. Next is France integration into global supply chain. France has been well established and integrated position in the global supply chains with a diverse range in industry and the strong manufacturing base The country is known from the expertise sector, the sector such as aerospace, automotive, luxury goods, and pharmaceutical. Manisha.
France's inflation rate is at 2.40% compared to 3.20% last month and 6.70% last year. This is higher than the long-term average of 1.80%. France is dropping its GDP growth forecast for this year from 1.4% to 1% and will lash spending by about $10 billion, the country's finance minister has said. Bruno Le Maire announced in the TV interview on French channel TF1 on Sunday that the government will cut the budget of each ministry and certain government initiatives with immediate effect to offset the sluggish growth outlook, doing so while able to keep its target of lowering its deficit to 4.44% in 2024 on its side. The finance minister said, assuring that the government will not raise taxes. The deficit stood at 4.9% in 2023. In the mid-February, the government lowered its 2024 growth forecast from 1.4% to 1%.
France in the modern day is a country built around the desires of the people. Fighting for better standards of living is as ingrained into the public psyche as Americans with apple pie, Australians with cheap wine, and Canadians with apologising. The role of any economy is to satisfy unlimited demands with limited resources. The people of France demand a lot, and in turn it's ultimately up to the economy to deliver on those demands. So, it has a lot of heavy lifting to do. In many ways, tourism is the best export industry you can have. For starters, it is endlessly renewable. You are never going to diminish your supply of Instagram photos in front of the Eiffel Tower, and people looking at the Mona Lisa doesn't use up the Mona Lisa. Beyond that, tourism is a great way to inject cash into the economy. When you think of typical exports that get loaded onto container ships, a majority of the proceeds from those sales will go to corporations with the ability to sell products internationally. From there, not a lot of this money will find its way down to the average citizen. Tourism, on the other hand, involves cashed-up Americans paying way too much to a local souvenir shop, or Japanese tourists paying €8 for a crepe along the Champs-Élysées, or cash that is going directly to the pockets of regular individuals running a business that will be put back into the local economy. France also has a low participation rate, which means not as many people in France are actually looking for a job, and those who are still can't find one. What makes this weirder is that French firms are actually struggling to hire workers.